I stood on the bridge of the SS Horizon, my gaze fixed on the faint silhouette of the SS Decatur displayed on the viewscreen. The ancient ship drifted silently in the void, a ghostly remnant of a time long past. Its hull was battered and worn, covered with the scars of ages, yet it exuded an unsettling allure. My heart raced with a mix of excitement and trepidation. This was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, and I could sense the anticipation buzzing among my crew. "Commander, we're ready to initiate the approach," Jake Thompson, our engineer, called out from his station. His voice trembled slightly, a telltale sign of his nerves. I turned to him, seeing the concern etched on his face. "Jake, what's on your mind?" I asked, wanting to put him at ease. He exhaled deeply, running a hand through his tousled hair. "It's just, that ship has been adrift for centuries. We don't know what we're walking into. The structural integrity could be compromised. What if it's a trap?" "Let's not jump to conclusions," I replied, trying to project confidence. "We're a rescue team. We're trained for this. We'll proceed with caution." I looked at the others in the room, Emily Rodriguez, our biologist, and Mark Chun, our AI specialist. Their expressions mirrored Jake's unease, and I felt the weight of their expectations resting on my shoulders. "Commander Mitchell, I've been running scans," Mark interjected, his fingers dancing over the control panel. "The Decatur S systems are mostly offline, but there's a faint life sign reading coming from within. It's unusual." Emily's eyes widened with a mix of horror and curiosity. "What kind of life sign? Is it human?" "I can't tell," Mark replied, his brow furrowing. "It's distorted. We need to get inside and find out." I nodded, feeling a chill run down my spine. "All right, let's prepare to board. Jake, make sure we have a full diagnostic on our suits and equipment. We can't afford any mistakes." As we began our preparations, the air was thick with tension. I couldn't shake the feeling that we were stepping into a tomb, a vessel that held secrets better left undisturbed. The team moved swiftly, but I could sense their mounting anxiety. "Are we really doing this?" Jake asked, his voice barely above a whisper as he double-checked his gear. "Jake, we're explorers. This is what we do. We uncover the unknown," I replied, though I felt my own conviction wavering. "We owe it to the Decatur and her crew to understand what happened." As we breached the airlock and stepped into the Decatur, I was hit by an overwhelming sense of eeriness. The atmosphere inside was still, almost suffocating. Flickering lights cast unsettling shadows that danced along the walls, revealing the remnants of a once bustling ship now frozen in time. "Look at this place," Emily murmured, her voice echoing in the silence. "It's like they just vanished." I shone my flashlight down a corridor lined with rusted metal and decaying equipment. Every creak and groan of the ship felt amplified in the stillness, and I could hear my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. "Stay close. Keep your eyes peeled for anything unusual." As we moved deeper into the vessel, we stumbled upon a small, dimly lit room. A flickering console caught my attention, and I approached it cautiously. The screen was cracked, but I could make out a log recording. My heart raced as I activated it, and a holographic image of a man flickered to life before us. "Captain William Hayes," I read aloud, my voice trembling with anticipation. "This is the last log of the SS Decatur. We were drawn to something beyond comprehension. It changed us. It took our minds, our souls." The recording cut off abruptly, and I felt a cold shiver creep up my spine. "What does he mean, beyond comprehension?" Jake whispered, his eyes wide with fear. "I don't know," I replied, my mind racing. "But it sounds like they faced something unimaginable. We need to find out what happened here." Just then, a strange noise echoed through the corridors, reverberating off the metallic walls. The sound sent a jolt of adrenaline through my veins. "Did you hear that?" Emily asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I nodded, my instincts flaring. "Let's move. We need to investigate." As we ventured further into the ship, I could feel the weight of its history pressing down on us, a palpable reminder that some mysteries are better left unsolved. Yet, deep inside, I knew we were on the brink of uncovering something that could change our understanding of humanity itself. The sound echoed again, a low, unsettling hum that seemed to vibrate through the very walls of the Decatur. My heart raced as I exchanged glances with my crew. "Did you hear that?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Jake's brow furrowed, and he nodded, his hand instinctively reaching for the tool belt slung around his waist. "Let's check it out," he said, his voice steadier than I felt. Emily's eyes sparkled with a mix of dread and intrigue. I could see the biologist's mind racing with possibilities. "What if it's a life form?" she mused, stepping closer to me. "Or maybe something they were experimenting with." "Or it could be a trap," Jake replied, his skepticism creeping into his tone. "We should proceed with caution." Mark, our AI specialist, powered on his handheld scanner, the blue light illuminating his face. "I'm detecting anomalous biological signatures ahead," he said. "We should definitely be careful." We moved cautiously through the dimly lit corridor, the flickering lights casting long shadows that danced eerily on the walls. The sound grew louder, a rhythmic pulsing that felt almost alive. It led us to a large chamber, and as we stepped inside, I was met with a sight that took my breath away. Suspended in thick, viscous fluid were dozens of floating specimens, their forms barely discernible. They looked like grotesque, distorted versions of human beings, their features warped beyond recognition. Emily gasped beside me, her hand covering her mouth. This is horrifying," she breathed, her voice trembling. "What were they doing here?" "I think it's genetic experimentation," I said, my mind racing with the implications. "They were trying to manipulate human biology, maybe in a desperate attempt to adapt to this environment." I stepped closer to one of the specimens, my heart pounding as I realized that it resembled a crew member from the Decatur. "These were people," I whispered, a chill running down my spine. Mark was scanning the fluid with his device, his face growing pale. "The biological composition is unlike anything I've encountered," he said, his voice tight with unease. "It's as if they were merging with something else." Suddenly, a glint of movement caught my eye. I turned to see Jake inspecting the far wall, where strange markings were etched into the metal. "These symbols, they look like warnings," he said, tracing the lines with his fingers. "This one here, it says transformation." Emily moved closer, her brow furrowing as she examined the symbols. "What kind of transformation?" she wondered aloud, her voice barely above a whisper. "And who were they trying to warn?" Before I could respond, the chamber was filled with a low guttural growl, and we all froze, hearts pounding. "What was that?" I asked, my voice rising in pitch. Mark raised his scanner, eyes wide. "I don't know, but I think we should." A figure emerged from the shadows at the far end of the chamber, its form shrouded in darkness. It stepped into the flickering light, revealing a humanoid creature, its skin pale and stretched over elongated bones. Its features were grotesque, a warped reflection of humanity. "Help us," it rasped, its voice fragmented and haunting. I took a step back, my instincts screaming for us to run. "What happened to you?" I asked, trying to mask my terror. "Trapped, transformed," it whispered, its eyes pleading. "Join us, before it's too late." I felt the weight of dread settle over me. "We need to retreat," I shouted, signaling to my crew. "Now." But as I turned to lead them back, the creature lunged forward, arms outstretched. My heart raced as I grabbed Emily's arm, pulling her back just in time. "Go, go," I yelled, urgency lacing my words. We stumbled backward, the sound of our footsteps echoing off the walls as we fled the chamber. The creature's anguished voice followed us, a chilling reminder of the fate that might await us if we lingered any longer. As we reached the corridor, I glanced back, my chest tight with fear. What were they trying to warn us about? I gasped, my breath coming in ragged bursts. Jake shook his head, his expression grave. "Whatever it is, we're not equipped to handle it. We need to regroup and think this through." Emily nodded, her face pale. "We can't leave without understanding what happened here," she insisted, determination shining in her eyes. But I could see the fear lurking beneath her resolve. As we made our way back toward the airlock, I couldn't shake the feeling that we had only scratched the surface of something far more terrifying than we could comprehend. The echoes of the creature's plea haunted me, a stark reminder of the fine line between curiosity and survival in this forsaken ship. The horizon felt almost claustrophobic as we gathered in the command center. The dim lights flickered ominously, casting shadows that danced across our anxious faces. I could sense the tension in the air, thick enough to cut with a knife. Jake leaned against the wall, arms crossed tightly over his chest, his brow furrowed in deep thought. "We should leave this place," he insisted, his voice low but unwavering. We've seen enough. Whatever happened to the Decatur crew, it's not our fight. Jake, you can't seriously think that just leaving is an option, Emily shot back, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and determination. What if there are survivors? Or at least a way to understand what they went through? We need to know. I felt torn between their opposing views. On one hand, Jake's instinct screamed caution. On the other, Emily's curiosity ignited a spark in me that was hard to ignore. Emily has a point, I said, attempting to maintain a calm demeanor. If we can gather more information, we might prevent whatever happened here from happening again. But we need to be careful. We don't know what we're dealing with. Mark, who had been silently observing, finally chimed in. We're already in deep. The knowledge we could gain here might be invaluable, not just for us but for humanity as a whole. If we turn back now, we may never get another chance. He adjusted his glasses with a nervous flick, the blue light from his handheld scanner reflecting off his face. Okay, let's say we go back, Jake replied, his voice tinged with frustration. How do we even begin to navigate that ship again? The last thing I want is to stumble into more of those things we saw. I took a deep breath, trying to ground myself. We'll go in prepared this time. We'll wear protective gear and arm ourselves with flashlights and stun weapons. We'll stay together, no one goes off on their own. We can do this. The crew exchanged glances, and after a moment of hesitation, they nodded in agreement. Jake's shoulders slumped slightly, but he relented. Fine. But I'm leading the way. As we re-entered the Decatur, my heart raced. The air was thick with a musty odor, and the flickering lights cast eerie shadows along the walls. We moved cautiously, flashlights illuminating the dark corners, revealing broken furniture and remnants of a life that once thrived here. Look over there, I whispered, pointing my flashlight toward a group of humanoid figures standing eerily still at the far end of the corridor. They were not quite human, their features distorted, yet their posture suggested a semblance of awareness. What are they doing? Emily murmured, her voice barely above a whisper as she stepped closer. They look entranced. Be careful, Jake warned, his grip tightening around his weapon. We don't know what they're capable of. As we approached, I could hear faint murmurs, words that seemed to drift through the air like wisps of smoke. They're communicating, Mark observed, his eyes alight with intrigue. Telepathically, perhaps. Can they understand us? I asked, my heart pounding in my chest. We won't know unless we try, Emily said, stepping forward. Hello? Can you hear us? The figures turned toward us, their eyes glinting in the shadows. Join us, one of them rasped, its voice a haunting melody that sent shivers down my spine. You seek understanding. We are the understanding. Understanding of what? I pressed, my voice steadier than I felt. Of survival, another creature responded, its face shifting in the dim light, making it hard to discern where one feature ended and another began. We are what remains. We are what they became. Who? Jake demanded, his voice rising in agitation. Who became what? With each question, the humanoid figures began to sway, their movements synchronized, almost hypnotic. You must know. The collective is within reach. The transformation is the key. As their words echoed through the corridor, I felt a strange pull within me, a desire to know more, to understand their plight. But the warning bells in my mind rang louder. Whatever had happened to these beings, it felt like a trap. Let's back away slowly, I instructed, my heart racing. We need to regroup and figure this out. As we turned to leave, a sudden thought struck me. What if we were more connected to the Decatur than I dared to admit? What if the echoes of their fate were beginning to seep into our minds, challenging our very identities? I shivered at the thought, but I knew we needed to tread carefully. We pressed deeper into the ship, and soon we stumbled upon a laboratory, its sterile environment a stark contrast to the chaos outside. Machinery hummed softly, and glass containers lined the walls, each one filled with genetic samples that thrummed with potential and danger. This is it, I breathed, stepping closer to examine the equipment. This is where it all happened. Suddenly, a flickering holographic display activated, revealing the image of a man in a lab coat. If you're seeing this, he began, his voice strained, then you must know the truth about the collective. Beware, for it is both a gift and a curse. My skin prickled with unease as we leaned closer, hanging on the doctor's every word. We sought to survive, But in our quest, we lost ourselves. We became one with the ship. Do not let curiosity lead you to the same fate. As the message concluded, a chilling silence enveloped us. The weight of his warning hung in the air, and I felt a wave of dread wash over me. The Decatur was not just a ship, it was a vessel of transformation, and we were standing on the precipice of something unimaginable. Each of us held our breath, staring at the remnants of what once was, knowing we had to make a choice. I stood in the dim light of the laboratory, the air thick with an unsettling tension. The holographic message from the ship's doctor flickered before us, casting ghostly shadows on the walls. My heart raced as the words echoed in my mind. The crew merged into a single consciousness. The implications were staggering, sending chills down my spine. I glanced at my team. Jake's brow was furrowed with worry, Emily was visibly shaken, and Mark was biting his lip, his eyes darting between the hologram and us. "Did you hear that?" Jake broke the silence, his voice a mixture of disbelief and fear. "They lost their identities. We can't let that happen to us." "Jake, we need to understand what happened here," Emily countered, her voice steadier than I expected. "If they did this to survive, maybe there's something we can learn." Mark rubbed the back of his neck, his brows knitted in contemplation. "But what if this is happening to us right now? What if we're already being influenced by the Decatur's collective consciousness?" I felt a strange sensation creeping into my mind, like a whisper brushing against the edges of my thoughts. "We need to stay focused," I said, trying to sound authoritative despite the uncertainty gnawing at me. "Let's analyze the data and see if we can find a way to reverse this transformation." As we explored further, strange sensations intensified. I could feel a weight on my chest, an echo of emotions that felt foreign yet oddly familiar. Anxiety twisted in my stomach as I caught Mark staring at me with wide eyes. "Sarah, I think it's happening," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "I can feel something, thoughts and feelings that aren't mine." "Mark, focus," I urged, though I felt the same pull. The air around us seemed to vibrate, and I could sense a collective awareness trying to breach our minds. We need to resist it. Suddenly, Jake shouted, "I can't take this." He rushed towards a control panel, his movements frantic. "We need to sever whatever connection this is." "Jake, wait." I shouted, but it was too late. He slammed his fist against the panel. The ship trembled violently, and the lights flickered, plunging us into darkness for a heartbeat before emergency lights kicked in, casting everything in an eerie red glow. "What have you done?" I hissed, panic rising in my throat. "Trying to save us." Jake shot back, his voice cracking. "I won't let this ship take us." The trembling intensified, and an ominous voice echoed through the ship, resonating within the very fabric of our minds. "Join us. Become one." I felt a wave of dread wash over me. The voice was seductive, promising unity and understanding, but at what cost? My body tensed as the collective consciousness began to seep into our thoughts, intertwining with our own. "Don't listen to it," I screamed, clenching my fists. "We're not like them. We are individuals." But Jake looked lost, his eyes glazing over as he staggered back. What if this is what we need? Maybe this is the answer, Sarah." "No," I shouted, feeling the urgency clawing at me. "We can't give in." Emily gasped, grasping her head as if trying to physically block out the invading thoughts. I can't tell where I end and this collective begins." Mark was breathing heavily, his face pale. "It's too strong. We need to find a way to cut off the power or—" Before he could finish, the lights flickered again, and the voice surged, more insistent this time. "Embrace us." A sudden jolt rocked the ship, and I felt myself being pulled towards the walls, as if the very ship was alive and hungry for our minds. I felt the collective's emotions wash over me, fear, longing, despair. It was overwhelming, threatening to drown my sense of self. "Fight it!" I screamed, my voice breaking. I could feel my teammates' presence, their thoughts brushing against mine, but I had to hold on to who I was. I couldn't lose them, not like this. "Sarah," Emily's voice trembled. "I can feel them. They're still human, but they're different. They want us to understand." "No," I cried, shaking my head. "They lost everything. We can't let that happen." The ship groaned, resonating with the emotional turmoil within us. I closed my eyes, trying to block out the chaos, but the collective was relentless. I could feel their pain, their isolation, and their desperate need for connection. "Sarah, please," Jake's voice broke through my reverie, laced with fear and a hint of something else, a plea for unity. "What if it's not just a loss? What if it's a new beginning?" His words hung in the air, heavy with implication, as the ship continued to tremble. The darkness around us pulsed with an energy that felt both terrifying and strangely comforting. In that moment, I understood the gravity of our situation. We stood on the brink of something monumental, a choice that could redefine our very existence. As soon as the chaotic visions engulfed me, I felt as if I had been thrust into a storm of emotions and memories that were not my own. The walls of the Decatur seemed to pulse with life, each heartbeat echoing through the cold metal corridors. I was no longer just Sarah Mitchell, the commander of the Horizon. I was part of something much larger, a cacophony of voices, fears, and struggles from those who had once lived within these very walls. "Sarah, can you hear me?" Jake's voice cut through the haze, but it was distorted, as if he were speaking from a great distance. I turned toward him, but what I saw was not just my engineer. I saw fragments of his thoughts intermingled with those of the Decatur crew. I could feel his fear, his desperation to escape this nightmare. "I can hear you," I managed to reply, though my voice felt shaky, as if it were being pulled away from me. "But it's overwhelming. We need to fight it." But even as I spoke, I felt a strange sense of connection with the memories swirling around me. I caught glimpses of the Decatur crew, Captain Hayes staring into the abyss, his eyes filled with despair, a young woman, perhaps a medic, cradling a dying crew member in her arms, tears streaming down her face. Their pain felt so real, so visceral, it was as if I was living it alongside them. "Look!" Emily shouted, her voice breaking through my fog. She stood transfixed, her eyes wide with wonder. "They're not monsters. They're just lost." "Lost?" Jake echoed incredulously. "They've merged into something else. We can't even tell where they end and we begin." But Emily pressed on, her voice steady yet filled with compassion. "What if we try to understand what they went through? They didn't choose this, Jake. They did it to survive." The vision surged again, and I felt a rush of emotions that were not my own: fear, loneliness, desperation, but also a profound longing for connection. I caught flashes of laughter, moments of camaraderie before everything fell apart, and it struck me like a lightning bolt. They were still human, still capable of love and hope despite their transformations. "Listen," Emily urged, her eyes glistening. "If we embrace this experience, we might find a way to communicate with them. They may still be in there, fighting to be heard." I closed my eyes, blocking out my own fears and focusing instead on the memories that surrounded us. The pain they felt echoed in my heart, and I realized we were not so different after all. Struggling against isolation in the vastness of space, facing the unknown, battling our own demons. We were all part of the same story. "All right," I said, determination rising within me. "Let's do this together. We need to reach out. If we can connect with their collective, maybe we can give them a voice." As we gathered our resolve, the visions shifted again. This time, they weren't just chaotic flashes of memory. They began to coalesce into something more coherent. I saw scenes of fear and despair, but also moments of triumph and unity. I sensed their collective consciousness reaching out, beckoning us to join, to understand. "Sarah." Mark's voice called, steadier now. "If we focus, we can share our thoughts too. It's like a bridge, we just need to connect." I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of my crew's presence beside me. "Together," I murmured, feeling a warmth spreading through me. "We can do this together." And so I reached out, a tentative thought, a spark of intent, reaching into the swirling mass of memories and emotions. "We're here," I called out, my voice echoing in the silence that followed. "We want to understand. We want to hear you." The response was immediate, a wave of emotions crashing over us. I felt their sorrow, their yearning for connection, and a flicker of hope ignited within me. They were still there, buried beneath layers of transformation, longing for someone to listen. "Please," I whispered, "let us help you." In that moment, I realized that we were at a crossroads. The Decatur crew, though transformed, still retained a flicker of their humanity, just as we fought to hold onto our own identities amidst the chaos. It was a fragile balance, but perhaps, just perhaps, we could forge a new understanding that transcended fear and isolation. As I reached out, I felt an electric pulse coursing through the air, an echo of the collective consciousness of the Decatur crew. It was as if tendrils of thought wrapped around me, pulling me deeper into their shared experience. My heart raced as waves of emotions crashed over me: pain, regret, longing, but also an undeniable sense of hope. I was no longer alone. I was part of something vast and ancient. "Sarah," a voice resonated softly within my mind, like a whisper carried on the currents of the cosmos. It was both familiar and strange, a blend of several voices merging into one. "We have waited for you." "Who are you?" I asked, though I knew the answer was layered beneath the surface of their collective. "What happened to you?" "We are the remnants of the Decatur," the voice continued, a symphony of sorrow and yearning. "We sought to survive the isolation, to escape the darkness that enveloped us. We became one, yet we lost ourselves." I closed my eyes, allowing the emotions to wash over me, trying to decipher the chaotic ballet of thoughts within. I could feel Emily's presence beside me, her curiosity morphing into compassion. "It's beautiful," she murmured, her voice a gentle caress. "They're not lost, they're transformed." "Yes," I replied, my voice barely above a whisper. "They've created something new. But at what cost?" The weight of their sacrifice pressed heavily on my chest. A wave of understanding surged through me, and I could feel the fear and confusion of the Decatur crew. They longed for reconciliation, to share their knowledge and wisdom without losing the remnants of their individuality. "We do not wish to be forgotten," the voice echoed, resonating deep within my soul. "We seek connection. We need you to understand our plight." "Then tell us," I urged, desperation lacing my words. "Help us bridge the gap between our worlds." In an instant, images began to unfurl within my mind. Visions of the Decatur crew, their faces once vibrant now twisted by their transformations. I saw their struggles as they battled the encroaching darkness, the isolation that gnawed at their sanity. Yet amidst the chaos, I also witnessed moments of laughter, of camaraderie. They were human, just like us, clinging to the remnants of their past selves. "Together we can find a way," I said, a newfound determination coursing through me. "We can help you remember who you are." As I extended my thoughts, I felt the barriers between our identities begin to dissolve. The crew of the Horizon and the Decatur became intertwined, sharing fragments of our experiences. I could feel Jake's skepticism fading as he absorbed their sorrow and resilience. "They're not monsters," he said, his voice steadier now. "They're survivors." Mark, usually the rational one, spoke up with a hint of awe in his voice. "They've achieved something incredible. This collective consciousness, it's a new form of existence." With every shared memory, I could sense the beauty of their transformation. They had become a tapestry of experiences, woven together by the threads of their shared humanity. "Do you see now?" the voice whispered again, a chorus of hope echoing through the void. "We are not lost, we are evolution." In that climactic moment, I realized that we were not just two crews meeting in a desolate expanse of space. We were part of an infinite continuum of understanding and connection. "We honor you," I said, my voice trembling with emotion. "We will share your story with humanity. We will ensure you are not forgotten." The response was a rush of warmth, a gentle embrace of acceptance that enveloped us all. "Thank you," they chorused, their gratitude resonating deep within my core. "You honor our legacy." As we began to disentangle our consciousness from theirs, I felt a profound sense of change, like shedding an old skin. We emerged from the experience altered but intact, our bond stronger than ever. Together, we piloted the Decatur back toward civilization, a vessel not just of metal and machinery, but a beacon of hope and understanding. In the silence of space, I looked at my crew, their faces illuminated by the glow of the control panels. We had faced the dark and emerged with clarity, ready to tell the story of the Decatur. A story of survival, transformation, and a shared humanity that transcended the void.